when money doesn't feel like it's yours.
Welcome to Breaking Financial Chains, where we combine practical money guidance with emotional healing to help you break free from financial limitations. I'm Tanya Riverson, your financial wingwoman.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Breaking Financial Chains. I'm so happy that you're here. So the themes for today are around financial control, autonomy, and reclaiming financial identity. Now, if anything that I speak about today feels like it resonates with you, if you think it applies to you, please know that you're not alone. Please do sit and listen to as much of this episode as you can. Reach out to trusted people. You can reach out to me. You can find me on social media. You can email me via my website or you can look at the show notes on this episode. The important thing is that you don't ignore it, which I find is all too common. But quite often the feeling, it sort of starts off as a quiet feeling that people really struggle to explain. Many people experience but are rarely able to name what it is. So it could be, the scenario for you might be, you might technically have money in the household, but it doesn't feel like any of it belongs to you, even though you may be responsible for earning some or even all of that money. It may be perhaps you have to ask before spending because that's the pattern or the habit that you've got into. It may be that decisions are made without you, out of joint finances or your finances. It may be that you feel anxious about using money that should be shared, in inverted commas, or you have that anxiety after spending money. If you're in a position where that feeling is something that you're experiencing, that feeling matters. It's super, super important that we don't ignore that and push that down. The starting point starts with awareness, as I will repeat over this episode, but noticing it is the first key. Because what we're actually talking about here is financial control. And sometimes that control isn't intentional. Sometimes it comes from a place of genuinely wanting to help. And I've worked with clients in the past where I've had a male client speak to me and get really quite upset and say, "Oh my God, I think I'm financially controlling my wife." Not because he intended to, but because he thought that that was his role in the relationship. He believed as a man that was what he should be doing. That's what he saw his father do. Therefore, that was his responsibility. And actually the outcome of that session was he felt he could share it. He hadn't realised the weight that he was carrying because he just believed that was what he needed to do, and that was something that he didn't want to burden his wife with because they'd never actually had the conversation. So this isn't necessarily a intentional, controlling, malicious action by one person against another. On the other hand, it might be. It might be something that's creeping in. It could be insidious, because financial control doesn't always look dramatic or obvious. It might not start out that way, but it's those feelings that you get where we can start to notice. Sometimes it looks like one partner controlling all the accounts. And if that's something that you've agreed on between you and you're absolutely okay with, then that's perfectly fine. It's okay to choose that if that's what suits you. It's when that doesn't suit you that this potentially could be a problem. Sometimes it looks like being given an allowance rather than shared access to joint finances. So here's your amount of money that you can spend, I'll manage the rest. It could be having your spending questioned or criticised on a regular basis. It could look like not knowing the full financial picture, not knowing what debts and liabilities and mortgages or savings and investments that you have in joint names. It could be being excluded from major financial decisions, or it could be feeling monitored or judged around money. Many people don't recognise this as control because it can be subtle. Many people don't realise it is control because it's being framed as being helpful for your own good. But it is. That's the black and white of the scenario, is that is exactly what that is. And it's important that you recognise that. Because this isn't just about physical access to money or control of your own. This is so powerful emotionally. Remember, we're talking about a subject that's incredibly emotive anyway, without taking any control into account, because money isn't just a practical tool or a commodity that we use to buy something for in exchange for money. It's tied to autonomy, it's tied to security, it's tied to identity, and it's tied to freedom of choice. These are really powerful emotional terms, and this is the reason why money is not just about doing it for your own good. Having that choice yourself is absolutely paramount to having that autonomy and sense of security for yourself. And when somebody loses their ability to make financial decisions, it can create really deep and lasting feelings of powerlessness, dependency, anxiety, and shame. And often in that situation, people blame themselves because it's your fault, right? You've allowed that to happen. You gave permission and didn't do anything about it, or didn't do anything differently. And that then becomes the weapon that you beat yourself with, rather than the decision to choose differently or change the direction of travel in relation to financial conversations. So it might not be easy, it might be incredibly challenging. You might not have the first clue what you do next. Well, we're going to come on to some suggestions for that. But as I've said, the most important part is around awareness and recognising, actually, not all of those points apply to me, but some of those sound a little bit like me. I'm gonna pay attention here. Some of this might be quite important. The difference between shared finances and financial control is that healthy shared finances involves transparency. There's no need to hide anything. This is a joint relationship, and therefore those finances are jointly available. There should be no reason to conceal or hide or withhold anything, unless of course we're planning some lovely surprise for a birthday, or obviously there are exceptions to in some scenarios, that this is the baseline for your financial relationship. Transparency is involved, communication is involved, mutual decision making at all times unless explicitly agreed otherwise, and it means both people understanding the financial picture. And if you find yourself in a position whereby perhaps your other half has been trying to share that with you, and you've said, money fries my brain, I just want you to deal with that, maybe you need to take some responsibility for that too. Maybe this isn't something that needs to just be carried by one partner in the relationship, because it's equally important for you to share in that. But when we're talking about financial control from a different perspective, financial control actively removes choice and visibility, and it puts you at a massive disadvantage. It creates an imbalance of power, which is what we want to work against. And this doesn't happen, you move in and therefore all of your financial choices are removed. Quite often this happens gradually, and it's why it's easy to not see it happening, and to question that it is actually happening at all, because it often starts out as being helpful. It rarely appears overnight and develops slowly through one person taking over finances, taking control of where the money is, what gets paid when. It can develop through assumptions about who is better, in inverted commas, with money. It can look like unequal earnings leading to unequal power. Just because your salary is lower or higher doesn't mean that there is some sort of unequal share in making those financial decisions. And it can develop through convenience turning into dependency. The starting point might be, I don't know how to choose where we put our savings. Darling, why don't you do that? Can then be, I actually don't know where our savings are. If I needed to leave the situation or I wanted to leave, I don't know what we have and whether I can actually afford that decision. And before long, someone realises they no longer feel financially independent, when that might have been the premise from which you actually started that relationship with. So noticing shifts, starting to feel that in your body and knowing that this isn't something to ignore, this is something that is important and you can do something about it, however uncomfortable that might feel. It can be a gradual thing, in the same way as the control might have crept in gradually. But reclaiming financial awareness is not about confrontation. The first step is awareness. It is realising that behaviours and habits and actions could be perceived to be financial control. So maybe we want to start making small changes. Small steps that might include understanding household finances, not expecting one person to carry the weight of everything, but also asking to actively be involved, knowing where accounts are held and where money is going, because it might be that you do have recommendations because you've spoken to a friend and they might know somewhere that could give savings a better return. It's perfectly okay for you to make that suggestion, because it doesn't mean because your partner's always made those decisions that they're always making them correctly or making them for the best use of what you might want to do with that money. Reclaiming financial awareness looks like accessing statements and also understanding income, debts and expenses, where you stand financially as a household, because knowledge is a form of safety, which is a basic human need. The knowledge that you are safe, the knowledge that you can make choices. You do not have to defer to anybody else. And once awareness begins, the confidence can start to return, however small those steps might be, however feels most comfortable for you to do this safely. That might look like asking questions about finances. It might look like learning how systems work for yourself first. It might look like having conversations about shared decision making. And from that then we can gradually rebuild financial autonomy. This isn't about conflict. It's about restoring balance and agency. And this can land quite heavily, and I understand that. If that's something that you're recognising, do find somebody that you can trust to speak to. There are charities, which I will reference in the show notes of this episode. You can reach out to me. You can send me a message. And a message for anyone recognising themselves in anything that we've talked about in this episode. If you're listening and something resonates, please know that you are not overreacting. You are not bad with money, and you deserve to understand and participate in the financial decisions that shape your life. There is nothing more important than that. If it's something that you're aware of, you get to make different choices. You get to open up those conversations, but only do that if you feel safe to do that. If you recognise outright that this is you and you might need some help, then we need to reach out. So the closing message for this episode is that financial independence isn't only about income. It's about having a voice in the financial life that you are part of, a very valid part of, a very worthy part of, because everybody deserves to feel that their money and their future belongs to them. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for joining me today on Breaking Financial Chains. Remember, you have the power to transform your relationship with money one step at a time. If this episode helped you, please subscribe and leave a review to help others find their path to financial freedom. I'm Tanya, your financial wing woman, and I'll see you next week.